In this segment, we are going to talk about dressing and stretching the hide. Our goal here is to condition the collagen fibers of the hide with an emulsified fat and then continuously stretching that hide until it's dry so that those fibers then themselves dry in a more open network. So we're going to condition, stretch until that hide is dry, and that's going to yield itself into a much more soft and drapey pelt. So, this has been worked in this couple steps that we've done, but doesn't necessarily have that feel that we're really going for that this very much so does. So this is a really important step. What we're going to do is we can work with emulsified fats, and so that's pretty broad. There's a number of things that you can use to condition the fibers of the hide, and we're going to apply them to we've removed the membrane, so to this fiber network that's exposed now of the hide. And then we are going to pull, and use some tools to help us out along the way. So when it comes to a conditioning recipe, right, so the dressing is that conditioning agent, and we're looking for those emulsified fats, we have a few options. A really classic traditional option is to utilize the brains of the animal. And sometimes this can be really accessible if you have the body of the animal in front of you. You can find brains at butcher stores. They've become harder for me to find, and so I'm not one to use them as much, but they're a wonderful solution. And you're going to make a solution out of them by mixing them into a blender with a little bit of warm water, zip, 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 and get that nice slurry that you can then apply. You can also utilize soap and oil. And I think that as much as I don't use this technique, it's really good if you want to work with young people, and it's generally just a little bit safer. You're not so concerned with them sticking their hands in their eyes and their mouths as much as you would be with brains. And you would want to use equal parts grated soap to oil, and again, a little bit of warm water. What I use the most is egg yolks. And I do because they're so accessible. We have a bunch of chickens, so I can just go grab some up. I can always get access to them no matter what time of year. And so just in that sense of ease and comfort, I'm always using egg yolks. So, for a white-tailed deer, let's say, a really large hide, I'm going to at least use a dozen just yolks to a quart to, maybe 2 quarts of warm water. And then I kind of just scale that down. If I'm going to work just one small hide like this, I'm going to take 1 egg yolk, equal parts warm water, mix that up into a slurry. And if I need more, it's pretty easy just to go crack another egg. It's important that you just use the yolk. We were talking about with membraning, if you were to take egg whites and smear them upon this hide and let them dry, they would dry into this hard mucousy quality. We're really just going for the fats, so not the whites, the proteins of the whites, just the fats. And we're going to crack that into a cup, add a little bit of warm water, mix it with your hands, and then we're going to apply it as a paste over the whole hide. It's fine to let that sit for a few minutes, go to the bathroom, get some water, and then you're just going to start pulling. You're going to start pulling on that hide. And so we're going to take that dense network of the fiber network, and we're going to pull those fibers apart and pull them open, and we're going to pull in all directions, and we're going to get that fat solution in there, and it's going to condition all of those collagen fibers. And we're going to do that until it's dry. It's important that you do it until it's dry. It's really easy to kind of cut that short. So things that you want to think about is that if it still has a tacky feel, it's still damp. If it feels cool to the touch, it's still damp. And you really want to carry this process all the way through to the end. About midway through this process, I'm going to recondition the hide. So I'm going to apply that slurry all over, and I'm going to pull on this hide for a while. And then when it's a little tacky and still damp, I'm going to give it another conditioning. And this just helps ensure that I have enough conditioning agent on these fibers to give me that soft, pliable drape. Perhaps you do it 3 times. Perhaps you only do it once and you stretch the hide all the way until it's dry and you find that it could be softer. you're just going to apply that conditioning agent again and go for it. You're not starting from step one as far as stretching goes. You've already given yourself that time. You've set yourself up by pulling those fibers apart. And so you're just going to give it more of those conditioning agents, and it'll stretch a little bit faster and dry a little bit faster. So if you're never satisfied with the final drapery, feel that softness of the hide, just apply more conditioning agent and stretch again, and you'll probably get it soft. So usually I expect to do at least 2 dressings. And yeah, I couldn't say enough about stretch till fully dry. I think that's one of the most important parts here. So to troubleshoot, a couple of things that come up with this. One is that I do my best to keep the solution on the skin side of the hide and keep it off of the hair side. It's just less to clean up in the end. And inevitably, you're going to get maybe some egg yolk on that hide. And after the smoking process, you can just wash that off pretty easily. But it's just a matter of cleanliness in the process. The other issue that I've seen come up is that people will want to soak their hides, or they'll want to apply that solution and keep the hide in that solution or damp with that solution for a long period of time. And what can happen is that your hide is going to be wet for an extended period, and then the hair is going to start to slip because it's going to start to enact that decaying process. And so really, I think it's just best to apply that solution and then start working from there. And that way, you don't have to deal with the sadness of all the hair slipping out. This is a real tactile feel and process. So you're going to see me do it, and then it's going to come time for you to do it, and you're just going to have to go for it, feel it in your hands. It's really quite simple. It's really just a matter of applying that solution and stretching it until it's dry, and then stretching it continuously that whole time. So really straightforward, but again, like, this is something that's very hand-based as a skill, and you're totally capable of it. So I've just applied the conditioning agent, my egg yolk and warm water, and I'm just starting to work it into the hide. It's getting absorbed into the skin, and I'm just getting those fibers to move around. And I'm pulling on the little arms. But I can feel it soaking in, and I'm just using various motions to pull in all directions. So kind of pulling and stretching out while working. I'm doing a lot of bicycling with my hands at the moment. Anything that's going to help move these fibers in all directions. So, and maybe you can see where the skin has started to break open as I'm working my way up to. So we're just going to keep up this steady process of pulling and stretching. And as the hide has taken in a lot of that solution, I'll apply a little bit more. So the water is helpful because it acts as a carrier to those emulsified fats. It helps really bring it into that fiber network. I could do this all by hand, no problem. To have some tools that are just helpful, I have this ground stake right here. And so it's a freestanding ground stake that has a base to it, and I don't need to support it. I also have some stakes that are just this section that I can easily zip into tables or benches. And what this does is it gives me this nice angle that I can then pull my hide against. So if you get into hide tanning, you definitely want a ground stake. Build a ground stake tall enough that it's about waist height so you don't have to do so much bending over. These are great tools. They're really effective. What's important is that I'm not trying to just like run it over really quick and really fast. That's not the point. So here, I'm going to rotate this. This is not the point, right? Really quick movements over the edge. The point is that you're pulling on those fibers. And so you really want to use that angle to your advantage. I find this to be a very effective tool. I will often sharpen them to keep that nice high angle. And it just helps along in the process. So this is an endurance run, right? This is not a sprint. I don't need to exhaust myself. I just need to keep working in a slow and steady manner. If I have my choice, I do all of my stretching on days with low humidity. We often run a lot of classes. We plan those classes months out, and I have run plenty of classes where we have our day for stretching on hot, humid, or rainy days. And we have to just cheat it. So if you're in that position, you can always run a fan or have a space heater or something to kind of cut that humidity if it's just particularly inclement out. So it hasn't been long. It's starting to dry out, which is nice. It's still damp, slightly cool to the touch, a little tacky. But I can feel that it's drier, and I'm starting to see light patches emerge, and that's always a great visual indicator for the fact that it's drying, is that you start to see the whiteness of the hide come through. Everything's a little darker usually when moist. And so I'm going to apply that egg solution once again, kind of get more conditioning agent into this hide, and I'm going to proceed ahead. Again, this is just a slow and steady process. People always like to ask how long this takes, and I think my favorite response is probably from Carmen Corradino, who says, as long as it takes, and that's just what it is. So